Danny Carter was elbow-deep in a busted cooling unit when he heard the explosion. It wasn't loud enough to be a real threat, more like a heavy thud that shook the dust off his workbench. His frontier colony workshop sat on the edge of the scrublands, where nothing exciting ever happened. Until today. He wiped his greasy hands on his coveralls and stepped outside. Black smoke curled up from beyond the ridge, maybe 2 miles out. Danny squinted against the twin suns. Whatever crashed out there was big. Real big. His 8-year-old daughter Sophie poked her head out from the living quarters attached to the shop. "Dad, what was that?" "Stay inside, honey. I'm gonna check it out." Danny grabbed his toolkit and an old medical kit he kept for emergencies. The walk took 20 minutes across rocky terrain. When he crested the ridge, his jaw dropped. The ship was gorgeous. Even damaged and smoking, it looked like something from a luxury catalog. Smooth silver metal, elegant curves, twice the size of his entire workshop. This wasn't some mining vessel or cargo hauler. This was money. Serious money. He approached carefully, calling out. No response. The main hatch hung open, bent and sparking. Danny climbed inside, his boots clanging on metal floors that felt weirdly warm under his feet. That's when he saw her. She was massive, nearly 9 feet tall, slumped against a wall of blinking consoles. Her skin looked like living crystal, catching light in shades of blue and purple. She was bleeding, some kind of luminescent fluid seeping from cuts on her arms and forehead. Her eyes opened when he approached, huge and frightened. She spoke, words tumbling out in a language that sounded like wind chimes and static. Some kind of translator device on her collar flickered and died mid-sentence. She clutched at it desperately, trying to make it work. Danny held up his hands slowly. Easy, easy. I'm not gonna hurt you. She didn't understand, but his tone seemed to calm her. She gestured weakly at her ship, at the failing systems around them. The lights were dimming. The hum of the engines sounded wrong, stuttering like a dying heartbeat. Danny looked around. He'd fixed tractors, atmospheric processors, even a crash survey shuttle once. But this was alien tech way beyond his pay grade. The smart move would be calling colonial authorities. They'd send specialists, maybe even get her proper medical help. But they'd also impound the ship. Ask 1,000 questions. Treat her like a specimen. Danny had dealt with bureaucrats before. They didn't care about people, just procedures. He made a decision. All right, let's see what we can do. He started with the basics. The alien was hurt, hungry, and clearly terrified. Danny opened his medical kit and gestured to her wounds. She hesitated, then nodded. The cuts weren't deep, and the antiseptic seemed to work even on her strange crystalline skin. He wrapped her arms carefully. Then he radioed Sophie. "Honey, can you heat up some of that stew from last night? Bring it out here. And grab Mom's old winter coat from storage." Sophie arrived 30 minutes later, struggling with a heavy thermos in the coat. Her eyes went huge when she saw the alien, but being a colony kid, she adapted fast. "Well, she's pretty." The alien managed a weak smile at that. Sophie handed over the stew, and the alien drank it carefully, her expression showing relief. The coat wouldn't fit perfectly, but Sophie had grabbed safety pins. Between the three of them, they managed to modify it into something wearable. Danny turned his attention to the ship. The main problem was obvious even to him. The power core was failing, unable to distribute energy properly. He traced the conduits with his hands, feeling for heat signatures, listening to the hum of dying systems. The alien watched him work, her head tilted in confusion. She kept pointing at his simple tools, his handheld scanner, his roll of electrical tape. She'd gesture at her sophisticated control panels, then back at his primitive equipment, clearly wondering how he planned to fix advanced alien technology with what looked like junk. Danny just shrugged and smiled. You'd be amazed what you can do with a good wrench and some stubbornness. He couldn't understand her systems directly, but engineering was engineering. Energy needed to flow from point A to point B. If the usual route was blocked, you made a new route. He bypassed fried circuits with spare wire. When a coupling wouldn't seal properly, he fabricated a replacement from scrap metal in his toolkit. When the computer rejected his fixes, he found manual overrides. Hours passed. Sophie brought them lunch, then dinner. The alien stopped looking confused and started looking fascinated. She began helping, handing him tools before he asked, holding panels open while he worked. Danny realized something as he worked. She tried to tell him who she was, probably something important. But right now that didn't matter. Right now she was just someone who needed help. And helping people was what humans did best. 3 months had passed since Vera left. Danny had gone back to his regular life, fixing broken equipment for colony farmers and trying to keep his bills paid. Sophie had stopped asking when the Crystal Lady would come back. Life moved on. Then everything changed in a single morning. Danny was replacing spark plugs on a harvester when his comm unit exploded with noise. The colony governor's voice was panicked, higher pitched than Danny had ever heard it. Carter. Danny Carter. You need to get to the administration building right now. I'm kind of in the middle of something, Governor. I don't care if you're in the middle of open-heart surgery. There's a fleet in orbit. A massive fleet. And they're asking for you by name. Danny's wrench slipped from his hand. What? Just get here. Now. The administration building was chaos. Every official on the colony was running around, talking in hushed, urgent voices. Danny walked in still wearing his grease-stained coveralls. The governor grabbed his arm immediately. What did you do? What did you do? I don't know what you're talking about. The Vurian Empire just arrived with enough firepower to glass this entire planet, and their representatives are demanding to speak with one Danny Carter, mechanic. So I'll ask again, what did you do? Before Danny could answer, the doors opened. 6 figures walked in, each one tall and imposing, wearing armor that looked like it cost more than Danny's entire workshop. They moved with military precision, their faces cold and unreadable. The lead representative, a stern-looking man with silver insignia covering his chest, looked around the room with barely concealed disgust. His eyes landed on Danny. You are the human called Danny Carter? That's me. I am High Chancellor Mordrin of the Vurian Imperial Court. 3 months ago you encountered a member of our royal family. Is this correct? Danny's stomach dropped. Royal family. Vera was royalty. I helped someone who crashed near my workshop. Yeah. The Chancellor's expression didn't change. You helped Crown Princess Vera Thanex, heir to the Vurian Empire, the largest sovereign power in the known galaxy. She was fleeing an assassination attempt when her vessel was damaged. The room went silent. Someone dropped a data pad. The governor looked like he might faint. Danny just stood there processing. Princess. She'd been a princess. And he'd fed her leftover stew and given her his dead wife's coat. The Chancellor continued, his tone formal and detached. The Empire recognizes the service you provided. As compensation, we are prepared to offer you 100,000 galactic credits. One of the other officials gasped. That was enough money to buy a new ship. Maybe 2. Danny could pay off every debt, upgrade his workshop, send Sophie to a real school off-world. But something about the way the Chancellor said it made Danny's jaw tighten. Like he was doing Danny some huge favor. Like Danny should be grateful for their generosity. Like he was some primitive who got lucky. I don't want your money, Danny said quietly. The Chancellor blinked. It was the first real emotion he'd shown. Excuse me? I said I don't want it. Keep your credits. You are refusing an imperial gift? The Chancellor's voice held a note of warning now. Do you understand what you're doing? Yeah, I understand perfectly. Danny's voice got louder. I didn't fix her ship for a reward. I didn't feed her and help her because I thought she was royalty who'd pay me back. I helped her because she was hurt and scared and needed help. That's what humans do. We help people. Not for money. Not for favors. Because it's the right thing to do. The room was dead silent. The Imperial delegation looked genuinely shocked. The governor's face had gone pale. No one refuses an Imperial gift, the Chancellor said slowly. It is considered a grave insult to suggest the offering is inadequate. Then I guess I'm insulting you. I don't care. Before anyone could respond, the doors opened again. This time the guards who entered were different. Elite soldiers in ceremonial armor, carrying weapons that hummed with energy. They formed 2 lines. And then she walked in. Vera looked nothing like the frightened, injured alien he'd helped. She wore flowing robes that shimmered like starlight, a crown of crystalline spikes that caught the light and threw rainbows across the walls. Her skin had been polished to a mirror shine. Guards surrounded her. Advisors whispered in her ears. She looked powerful, untouchable, every inch the crown princess. Her eyes met Danny's for just a moment. They were cold, distant, professional. Danny Carter, she said formally, her voice carrying through the room. On behalf of the Vurian Empire, I extend my gratitude for the assistance you provided during my time of need. Your service will be recorded in the Imperial archives. It felt like being punched in the gut. This wasn't the person who'd laughed at Sophie's jokes, who'd helped him sort spare parts, who'd sat on his workshop floor eating stew. This was a stranger wearing Vera's face. We're square, Danny said, his voice flat. You don't owe me anything. We're done here. He turned and walked out, leaving the crown princess of the largest empire in the galaxy standing in stunned silence. Danny thought that was the end of it. He went back to his workshop, back to fixing broken machinery and raising Sophie. The Imperial fleet stayed in orbit for 2 more days, then vanished. Good riddance. But he'd made a mistake. A big one. The colony's information network started buzzing with strange chatter. Off-world merchants suddenly knew his name. Ships that had never stopped at their colony before began docking at the spaceport. Some visitors asked too many questions. Others just watched his workshop from a distance. Sophie noticed it first. "Dad, that's the 3rd weird person this week just standing across the street." Danny looked out the window. A figure in dark clothing quickly turned away. "Yeah, I see them." "Are we in trouble?" He wanted to say no. He wanted to tell her everything was fine. But Danny had learned not to lie to his daughter. "I don't know, honey. But I want you to stay close to the workshop, okay? No wandering off." The attack came on a quiet Tuesday evening. Danny was closing up shop, Sophie was doing homework in the back room. He heard the door open and turned, expecting a late customer. 3 figures in tactical gear rushed in. No words, no warnings. They moved like professionals. Danny's combat instincts kicked in, old military training from before Sophie was born. He dove behind his workbench as energy blasts scorched the air where he'd been standing. His hand found a pneumatic wrench, heavy and solid. "Sophie. Back door. Now." He heard her scramble. Good girl. She knew the drill. They'd practiced evacuation routes, even though he'd hoped they'd never need them. Danny popped up and threw the wrench hard. It caught one attacker in the helmet, staggering him. Danny grabbed a canister of industrial solvent and sprayed it at the second attacker's face shield, blinding him temporarily. But there were too many. More were coming through the door. 6, maybe 7 total. Professional killers with real weapons, and all he had were tools and desperation. He triggered the emergency lockdown he'd installed years ago, paranoid preparation paying off. Heavy shutters slammed down over the windows. The attackers spread out, trying to flank him. Danny had home advantage though. He knew every inch of this workshop. He triggered the hydraulic lift under one attacker's feet, sending him crashing into the ceiling. He overloaded a plasma cutter, creating a bright flash that scattered 2 more. But they adapted fast. Too fast. One got behind him, weapon raised. Then the wall exploded. Vera came through like a force of nature, her crystalline form blazing with light. She moved with deadly grace, striking down attackers with precise, brutal efficiency. No ceremony now, no royal pretense. Just raw power and fury. Danny stared for half a second, then jumped back into the fight. Together they were devastating. Danny's unpredictable improvisation combined with Vera's trained combat skills. They covered each other's blind spots naturally, like they'd been fighting together for years instead of minutes. The last attacker tried to flee. Vera didn't let him get far. Silence fell over the destroyed workshop. Danny was bleeding from a cut on his arm. Vera had scorch marks across her robes. They were both breathing hard. "Sophie?" Danny called out. "I'm okay, Dad." Her voice came from the safe room. "Smart kid." Vera looked around at the carnage. "I'm sorry. This is my fault." "Yeah, it kind of is." Danny slumped against his workbench. "Want to explain what the hell is going on?" She sat down across from him, looking exhausted. The royal mask had cracked. This was the Vera he remembered. When you refused the reward, it created a political crisis. In our culture, refusing an imperial gift suggests you find it insulting. It made you important. Dangerous. Dangerous? I'm a mechanic. You're a human who insulted the crown princess and lived. Some factions see you as a threat to traditional power structures. Others see you as leverage against me. Either way, you became a target. Danny laughed bitterly. Great. Just great. I monitored your location from orbit. When I saw the assassins, I came immediately. My advisors told me not to. They said you made your choice, that you rejected the Empire's protection. So why'd you come? Vera was quiet for a moment. Because when I was in your workshop, hurt and scared, I wasn't Crown Princess Vera Thanex. I was just Vera. Just someone who needed help, and you helped. No politics, no schemes, no expectations. Do you know how rare that is? You should have told me who you were. Would you have treated me the same? Danny opened his mouth to say yes. Then he stopped. Thought about it honestly. Probably not, he admitted. Exactly. She looked at him with those huge eyes. I was heading toward a political marriage when I fled. Someone I'd never met, someone chosen to strengthen alliances. My whole life has been duty and protocol. 3 months with you and Sophie was the first time I felt like a real person. Danny's anger faded. That sounds lonely. It is. So what now? Vera's expression hardened. These assassins weren't random. They were too well trained, too well informed. There's a conspiracy at the highest levels of the Empire. People who want me dead or controlled. She looked at Danny directly. I need allies I can trust. People who can't be bought or intimidated. People who help because it's right, not because it's profitable. Danny understood. You need humans. I need you. Danny stared at Vera like she'd grown a second head. You want me to what? I want you as my chief of engineering and personal advisor. As an equal, not a subordinate. Vera stood up, pacing through the wreckage of his workshop. More than that, I want to propose a formal alliance between the Virian Empire and humanity. Protection and resources in exchange for human innovation and expertise. That's insane. Is it? Vera turned to face him. Your species has survived on frontier worlds with minimal support. You've turned scrap into functional technology. You solve problems that our best engineers wouldn't even attempt because they'd consider them impossible. And you do it with duct tape and stubbornness. Danny couldn't argue with that. But I'm just one guy. I fix tractors and atmospheric processors. You fixed my ship when Imperial engineers would have declared it unsalvageable. You fought off trained assassins with workshop tools. That's not just technical skill, Danny. That's the human ability to adapt, to improvise, to refuse to give up. That's what the Empire needs. Sophie emerged from the safe room, cautious but curious. Are you asking us to leave? Vera knelt down to Sophie's eye level. I'm asking if you'd like to help me change an empire. But I won't lie to you. It would be dangerous. There are people who want me gone, and they'll see you as targets too. We're already targets, Sophie pointed out, gesturing at the destroyed workshop. She's got a point, Danny muttered. If we refuse? Danny asked. What happens then? Vera's expression darkened. The conspirators won't stop. They've already found you once. They'll try again. And I can't protect you from orbit forever. My presence here is already causing tension with my advisors. Danny felt trapped. Accepting meant dragging Sophie into Imperial politics, away from the only home she'd ever known. But refusing meant staying vulnerable, waiting for the next attack. I need to think about this, Danny said. And it's not just my decision. This affects the whole colony. Hell, it affects all of humanity. Then let's ask them, Vera said simply. 2 days later, the colony held an emergency assembly. Every resident packed into the main hall. Representatives from Earth's colonial administration joined via hologram, their faces skeptical and worried. Danny stood at the front, feeling incredibly out of place. He was a mechanic, not a politician. But here he was, about to decide humanity's future. Governor Mitchell opened the meeting. We've been presented with an unprecedented situation. Crown Princess Vera Thanex has proposed a formal alliance between the Virian Empire and humanity. Before we proceed, I'll let Danny Carter explain what happened and why we're even having this conversation. Danny told them everything. The crash, the repairs, the revelation, the assassins. He didn't sugarcoat the dangers or oversell the benefits. When he finished, the room exploded with questions. This sounds like subjugation. We'd be giving up our independence. What's stopping them from taking over once we're dependent on them? This could be our chance to finally be taken seriously. Or it could get us all killed. A representative from Earth's Defense Council spoke up, her hologram flickering. With all respect, why should we trust the Virian Empire? They've ignored humanity for decades. Now suddenly we're valuable? This feels like exploitation. Vera stood, her presence commanding immediate silence. You're right to be suspicious. My empire has overlooked humanity because you were considered too primitive, too small to matter. That was arrogance and short-sightedness. Danny Carter proved that wrong. Not with weapons or wealth, but with ingenuity and basic decency. Pretty words, the Defense Council representative shot back. But what guarantees do we have? None, Vera admitted. I can't guarantee this will work perfectly. I can't promise there won't be friction or misunderstandings. What I can promise is a genuine partnership. Humans would hold real positions of authority, not token roles. Your input would shape imperial policy. And you'd have protection that frankly you desperately need. The debate raged for hours. Some saw opportunity. Others saw a trap. Sophie sat in the front row watching everything with wide eyes. Finally, Governor Mitchell called for order. Danny, you started this. What do you think we should do? Danny stood up slowly. His hands were shaking. Look, I'm not a politician or a military strategist. I'm just a guy who fixes things. But I know this, humanity has been the underdog for as long as we've been in space. We've scraped by on the edges, barely surviving, while bigger civilizations ignored us or looked down on us. He looked around the room, making eye contact with his neighbors, people he'd known for years. Vera's offering us a real seat at the table. Not as servants or vassals, but as partners. Yeah, it's risky. Yeah, there are people in the Empire who'll hate us for it. But when have humans ever taken the safe path? We left Earth when it was dangerous. We colonized hostile worlds when everyone said it was impossible. We survived when we had every reason to give up. His voice got stronger. This is our chance to stop being the species everyone overlooks. To show the galaxy what humans can really do. Not by conquering anyone, not by building the biggest weapons, but by being who we are. Problem solvers. Survivors. People who help each other when things get tough. Danny looked at Vera. I'm scared of what this means for Sophie. For all of us. But I'm more scared of staying small and hoping the galaxy leaves us alone. Because they won't. The assassins proved that. We're already in the game. The question is whether we play to win or just try to survive. The vote wasn't unanimous, but it was decisive. The alliance was approved. That night, Danny became the first human to hold an official position in the Virian Empire. Sophie, despite her age, became something no one expected. An unofficial cultural ambassador. Aliens were fascinated by her, and she had a gift for explaining human perspectives in ways that made sense to them. Together, Danny and Vera began the real work, investigating the conspiracy. They had names now, powerful nobles who saw human inclusion as a threat to centuries of tradition. The fight was just beginning. But for the first time, humans weren't fighting alone. The investigation took 6 weeks. Danny and Vera followed money trails, intercepted communications, and pieced together a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of the empire. 5 noble houses, each with centuries of power, had orchestrated everything. They tried to kill Vera. They'd sent assassins after Danny. All because they saw human inclusion as a threat to their traditional control. Now those nobles stood in the Grand Imperial Court, facing formal charges. The chamber was massive, carved from crystal that seemed to glow from within. Thousands watched from galleries above. Danny felt tiny standing there in his nicest clothes, which still looked shabby compared to the elaborate robes everyone else wore. Lord Hexarian, leader of the accused nobles, stood tall and confident. His crystalline skin was darker than Vera's, his crown more elaborate. He'd been a power in the Empire longer than Earth had been sending out colony ships. These charges are absurd, Hexarian declared, his voice echoing through the chamber. We are being accused by a human. A primitive who barely understands our culture, let alone our laws. The crowd murmured. Danny felt their eyes on him, most of them hostile. Vera stepped forward. The evidence is clear. Financial records, communications, testimonies from hired operatives. This conspiracy attempted to assassinate me and destabilize the succession. Evidence can be fabricated, another noble, Lady Corinth, said smoothly. We demand trial by intellectual combat. The crowd erupted. Even Vera looked shaken. Danny leaned over. What's that mean? It's an ancient tradition, Vera whispered. Instead of just presenting evidence, both sides engage in strategic argument. Think of it as a debate mixed with chess. Each argument must follow logical rules, counter the opponent's previous move, and build toward a conclusion. It tests both truth and mental capability. And if we lose? The charges are dismissed. They go free. Hexarian smiled coldly. Of course, the human wouldn't understand such things. Perhaps the princess should choose a more qualified advocate. Danny felt anger flash through him. That tone. That dismissive, condescending tone that said humans weren't good enough, weren't smart enough, weren't worth respect. I'll do it, Danny said loudly. Vera grabbed his arm. Danny, no. These nobles have trained in intellectual combat their entire lives. It's not just about being right, it's about thinking differently than your opponent expects, Danny finished. Yeah, I got it. Let me try. The trial began within the hour. Danny and Hexarian stood on opposite platforms, a holographic field between them displaying their arguments as geometric patterns. Each point had to connect logically to the previous one. Each counter-argument had to follow specific rules. Hexarian opened strong, building an elaborate structure of logic about traditional power, the dangers of rapid change, and how the conspiracy charges were politically motivated. Danny watched the patterns form. He could barely understand half the formal rules, but he understood the core. Hexarian was building a wall, layer by layer, following predictable patterns. When it was Danny's turn, he didn't attack the wall. He went around it. You talk about tradition and stability, Danny said. But traditions exist for a reason. What was the original purpose of the imperial court? Hexarian looked thrown by the simple question. To govern effectively. Right. To solve problems, protect citizens, keep the empire strong. Danny built his own pattern, but it looked weird compared to Hexarian's rigid structure. So when the empire faces a new problem, what matters more? Following old procedures or actually solving the problem? Procedures maintain order. The procedures didn't save Princess Vera when her ship crashed. I did. With duct tape and stubbornness. Scattered laughs from the crowd. See, you think in straight lines. Human thinking doesn't work like that. We zigzag. We try weird stuff. We break rules to find solutions. Danny started building faster, connecting points in ways that technically followed the rules but violated every expectation. He used metaphors where Varians used pure logic. He brought up examples from Earth history that paralleled their situation. He turned Hexarian's own arguments back on themselves in ways the noble never anticipated. The key moment came when Hexarian tried to argue that humans were too unpredictable to be trusted partners. Danny grinned. Exactly. We're unpredictable. Which is why your conspiracy failed. You planned for Varian responses, Varian logic, Varian behavior. You never planned for a human mechanic who'd help someone just because it was the right thing to do. You can't predict kindness, can you? You can't plan for someone refusing money because they don't want a reward. The holographic patterns shifted. Danny's chaotic web started wrapping around Hexarian's rigid structure, finding weaknesses, exploiting gaps. Hexarian made his fatal mistake. He got angry. He abandoned careful logic and attacked emotionally, calling humans inferior, primitive, unworthy. Danny stayed calm. You just proved my point. You see us as threats because we don't think like you. Because we might actually change things. And change terrifies people who've held power for centuries. The final evidence dropped like a hammer. Communications from Hexarian's own network, admitting to the assassination plot, revealed during his emotional outburst. In his anger, he'd validated their authenticity by not denying specific details. The trial ended. The conspiracy was exposed. The 5 noble houses were stripped of their positions and exiled. 3 months later, Danny stood on the observation deck of Vera's flagship, Sophie beside him. Below them, Earth rotated slowly, blue and green and beautiful. It's smaller than I thought it'd be, Sophie said quietly. Yeah. But that's where we came from. Where all of this started. Sophie was quiet for a moment. Then, Dad, would Mom be proud of us? Danny thought about his late wife. About the life they'd planned together, the quiet future they'd dreamed of. This wasn't that future. This was bigger, scarier, more important. He put his arm around Sophie's shoulders. You know what? I think she'd be terrified. But she'd also say we're doing the right thing. And she'd tell us we're just getting started. Sophie smiled. Yeah, she would. Below them, Earth continued its eternal spin. And above them, the stars waited.